Welcome to the Whitetail Advantage Podcast with your host, Brett Bovin. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
What up?
Dan. Well, kind of weird doing a show on a Sunday.
Well, a little bit of adversity never hurt anybody.
No, yeah, it's just we had to move things around, but I'm definitely okay with that.
Definitely worth it for the guest.
Oh, for sure. But
Can't miss up an opportunity like that.
But for listener, I am your host, Brett Bovin, along with my co-host Dan Asher. Dan, say hi for everybody.
Howdy, everybody.
If this is your
Beautiful
first
Sunday
time
night.
tuning into I'm sorry, Dan, were you going?
No, I was just saying it's a beautiful Sunday night.
It is. It's really windy though.
Mm-hmm.
If this is your first time listening to the show, we like to call this the electronic campfire. We do a show Monday through Thursday, a live show at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We travel to state, talking to multiple guests from that state, learning what they do best from each state. Tonight's guest is Troy Pottenger. Now, Dan, not going to lie, I'll say a lot. Just been in... I got no word.
just some butterflies.
Yeah. Just anxious to have been watching this guy. Just been a big fan and anxious to finally able to talk to him ourselves, kind of in a way. And yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for it for sure. I agree with you. I got a little bit of butterflies too. You know, it'd be like meeting, one of the Chicago Bears. That's the football team that I enjoy. If I were to meet one of those players, I'd probably be a little starstruck. And when it comes to whitetail hunting, a little starstruck with Troy because he's a big buck killing son of a bitch. So I'm excited.
The stuff that's out there from talking to Brian from Wednesday's show is just like, man, you have all these adversities going against whitetail deer, and I'm just anxious to learn more of how he's so successful out there and for
in
what
Idaho.
Yeah.
Yep.
What state did I say?
You didn't say. I was just clarifying
okay.
so people knew. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, man, I'm anxious to dive deeper into the whitetails themselves. Because we only got like 15 minutes at the end with Brian about that, but yeah, I'm anxious to hear to see what we got going on out there more in Idaho, and we got a great guest.
It makes sense because from what I've gathered, Idaho seems very unique, and it seems like it'd be a tough state to choose one animal. When you have so many varieties out there, and it makes sense why people are passionate more for more than one animal.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Well, if you're ready, I'm gonna hit the applause button.
Yeah, send them in, bro.
Dan, that's your job.
Oh, there you go.
No, don't worry, Dan. I'll take care of it.
No, that's my bad.
Oh, you're good.
Good stuff.
Troy, thanks again for coming on the show. We really greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, guys. That intro's pretty money.
Oh, thank you.
I like it. Yeah, we just
you got me laughing. You got me laughing already. It's gonna be a good night.
Oh yeah. Well, real quick, Troy, we have already spilled the beans on our fandom for you, but for anybody who doesn't know you, could you give a quick intro and tell us a little bit about yourself and your hunting background?
Yeah, you bet, guys. My name is Troy Pottenger, and I'm a native Idahoan. 54 years old this year. Spent my entire life either living in Idaho or Montana. I went to college in Montana, kind of like my son's doing now.
Okay.
Really, really call home the Northwest, which, it's funny. I was on a podcast 3 or 4 weeks ago, the Huntar podcast, and those guys were like, Troy, where is Idaho? So for your listeners, I live in a really cool triangle. Actually, with Canada above me, it's 4 really cool areas to hunt whitetails. So I live way up north, born and raised way up northern in the panhandle of northern Idaho, near the Canadian border. And Idaho's real narrow. If you remember any of your geography from the old days, Idaho's got a real narrow panhandle up top. So each way, guys, I'm about 45 minutes from either Montana or Eastern Washington.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. And then I got Canada just above me, a little over an hour. And then I've got another property that's real close to the Canadian border. So, I just spent my entire life in this inland Northwest, not out on the coast, but the inland Northwest, huge country, probably the biggest national forest that you can connect to dots, or that butt up against each other. Probably the largest public lands you can imagine in the States, outside of Alaska. So really cool country. I hunt all 3 states. Spend a lot of time in Idaho, obviously, my home state, where I cut the majority of my teeth, the majority of learning how to hunt whitetails in Idaho, and then I expanded out as I got older. And because I went to college in Montana, and I was a poor college kid back in those days, I actually became a Montana resident on purpose. So school would be real cheap, and I was playing ball at a small college NAI school, just really had a blast. And anyway, got into hunting over in Montana too. And then I have a lot of family in Montana. So yeah, I kind of run a big circle, guys. Idaho's my home state, but I'm very close to those 2 other states. And then you catch me up in Canada too. I just absolutely love it out here. It's vast, mountainous, some of the most beautiful country in the United States. We are one of the biggest logging areas and communities in the history of the United States. So that means we have a lot of timber, and everything's coniferous. So really not much deciduous trees unless you're down in the bottoms where people have planted them, and down in the river valleys. So just picture in your mind huge river valleys, huge drainages, mountains that run up to 8, 9, 10,000 feet in Idaho, and Washington and Montana, and then down into these valleys that are 1,500 feet above sea level. So think about that elevation. Think about a sea of timber, steep country, really unforgiving. I think we have probably the greatest amount of apex predators in one area that you could imagine when it comes to the lower 48. And then elk and bear and grizzlies and everything. And then you add in the mule deer and the whitetails. And when I was young, growing up on a little ranch, my dad was a logger, my mother was a teacher, and my dad was really always into raising cattle and doing stuff on the side of his logging business, because logging kind of has seasons to it. He'd work about 8 to 9 months out of the year logging when the weather worked. And we get such harsh springs and winters and runoff that you kind of have to stay out of the woods a little bit. And sometimes you have to stay out of the woods too when we have our fire seasons. We burn a lot out here. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. A lot of forest fires. But anyway, all that to say, guys, I grew up in an unbelievable setting for learning about mountain whitetails and how these whitetails survived all those obstacles I just touched base on. Really harsh weather conditions, climate, habitat is actually really incredible in the mountains because of all the logging industry. And then we have really cool ag and stuff in the bottom. So it's just a heck of a mix for whitetails. And growing up on that little ranch when I was a kid, that's what ran around all over our ranch. So I was just always around whitetails, fell in love with them when I was young, kind of a nerd about them, really wanted to, kill my first whitetail by myself when I was 12. And my dad sent me out the back door and said, go get one. And I went and killed a buck the first day I ever hunted for one. And I was 12 and took my Irish setter with me, took my dog with me just to be safe because I was 12 years old. And, the very first time I went to hunt a buck, I killed one. And it was because I'd been watching them all summer on my place and just looking at my birthday, waiting for October 22nd to come around so I could hunt. And luckily it fell within the hunting season. My season actually back then didn't open till November 1st. So I had to wait till November 1st. and I just fell in love, guys. I killed that first deer by myself, and don't know if I'd ever seen my dad any more proud of me than that day. Because I came home just freaking pumped. Had my dog with me. It said, "Dad, I killed a buck. And I shot a little spiker. And he couldn't believe it. He's like, "Are you shitting me?" And that's kind of how it all started, guys. And then I really started in my high school or middle school and high school years, just really diving into the biology of whitetails, because after that first deer, I really wanted to get like a 3-point, a 3x3 out here. When I say 3-point, we say 3x3 or 4x4. So I'll try to talk in your guys' terms too. So, I really wanted to kill like a 4-point or a 6-point, as you guys would call them, maybe an 8 if I got lucky in my second year. And I knew I was going to have to try to figure them out. And I'll never forget my dad telling me, he said, "Son, my dad was a hell of a mule deer hunter and a really good elk hunter." And he said, "Son, you want to learn how to hunt these whitetails?" He told me, he said, "You're going to have to figure it out." Because he goes, "They are the hardest thing to kill in this country." So that all got to me young. I dove into it full throttle, even as a kid. It's just kind of my personality. When I was a sophomore in high school in a zoology class, I put a whitetail buck, every bone completely together for my project. Stuff like that. That was just what I loved. And every year from 12 years old on, I killed my own buck every year, all through high school, all through college. So what happened was I became a whitetail nerd kind of in a quiet way behind the scenes, because it wasn't a big deal back then. We had no social media. I grew up on a telephone line that if you picked it up, you might hear your neighbor talking. We had TV, but we had no reception because we lived out in the mountains, and I literally grew up in one of the coolest places ever for putting me where I am at today. I know God had a plan for all of it. I was just always in the woods, never on a phone, never watching TV, played 3 sports every year, really busy, but every free chance I got, I was in the woods. And shed hunting, picking up sheds, selling those for school clothes, just making extra money. And I had so much freedom as a kid. Always had my Irish setter with me. Just really got to looking back on it, guys, it's pretty cool. Like, I was very fortunate to get to grow up the way I did. And then I went off to college in Montana and played 5 years of football in Montana, redshirted a year, then played 4. And then as soon as I got done with my degree, got a teaching job. I had always logged and worked with my father in the summers. So I went and bought some equipment when I was right out of college, and I got a teaching job, bought some equipment, and started working year round. And then every free chance, logging equipment, every free chance that I had, guys, every ounce of free time I had in my 20s was scouting, walking the woods, picking up sheds, reading signs, figuring out deer, figuring out how to kill them. And pretty much right after college, I was done rifle hunting. I was ready to just bow hunt because I wanted to force myself to have to kill these bucks. And back then, I would say in my early 20s, a 3 or 4 year old was a big deal to me. And that's what I was targeting. And I just wanted to make myself have to get close and get in their wheelhouse and be able to kill them with a bow and arrow. And I actually killed elk before I killed big white or even nice whitetails with a bow, because elk were a little easier to hunt. I could call those elk in high school and college, and we killed them. I mean, not crazy easy, but it was a lot easier than hunting an old buck, trying to hunt a buck. And just matriculated from there, guys. I've never let off the throttle. I probably work harder at it nowadays. I'm just much more efficient. I don't make a tenth of the mistakes I used to. And I'm always learning, and I always am very open and honest with myself about reminding myself, you never know, you never understand or know enough. And if you think you do, that's when you start that's when you start failing. So for me, I lose a lot of battles, but those are always lessons. And these mountain bucks out here are incredible to hunt. I hunt just big public lands or forestry company ground, which the public can hunt. And yeah, it's just turned into an unbelievable life and lifestyle for me. I didn't get married till I was 30. So through all my 20s, all I did was whitetails outside of my job. That was it. I mean, 200 to 250 partial days a year in the woods, always. And just really sacrificed a lot of fun, but I was having more fun and I was much more just loving life doing that stuff. And I did it all by myself. When I was 17, my dad got killed logging. So I was on my own after 17. And it kind of was my happy place to go after I lost my dad for a lot of years. And my mom was just an incredible woman. I have one brother, Rob Pottenger, great guy. He went to work right out of high school and owns 2 businesses now, and it's just same mentality with what he does. He's an outfitter and then owns a trucking company. But anyway, our mother, I don't talk about my mom enough. She battled cancer for 24 years after dad died. So we were always really a tight, close threesome, my brother, myself, and my mom, because she was always sick on and off. And she was so tough and such a fighter. She actually went into remission with breast cancer twice, beat it twice, and then it got her the 3rd time after 24 years, right after my pa died. That's when it started. I think that stress really kicked that in. But anyway, guys, that's a lot. I know I said a lot there, but it was I say that because all of those obstacles in life and then hunting these mountain deer, public land with a bow and arrow, I just have never had anything come easy for me, ever. And I've never been like just naturally, in my opinion, super talented until I put the work in, and then the talent started like developing. So that's kind of where I'm at. Today, I look back on it all and it's just been awesome. It's been a heck of a ride. I got involved with some awesome outdoor people, Andre DeQuisto, Lone Wolf, Whitetail Addictions, over a decade ago. Knew those guys way before that. And again, social media is around now. We all know each other. Even 20 years ago, guys, all it was forums, where you type something on a forum.
Yeah.
And it's just blown up since then. So I'm glad when I get these opportunities to get to talk to you guys like you. I hope, and I'm happy. My goal is to always try to share something with a listener that helps. So that's kind of where I'm at today. I work for Whitetail Addictions. I've got 2 years left in my teaching career. And then outside of teaching, I kind of took after both my parents. I still do a lot of construction, own equipment, and set my own schedule. And I don't work for anybody but myself after 2 years of teaching here pretty soon. And then for me, working for Whitetail Addictions guys and Lone Wolf Custom Gear, that's not even work to me. I absolutely just love that I get to work with those guys and for Andre. It's not even work to me, even though it's a lot of work. It doesn't feel like work. So yeah, that's kind of my background, guys. And that's where I'm sitting here today, and a lot of unbelievable whitetail bucks in my lifetime on these big public lands. And you probably see a couple of them in the background here, but
oh yeah,
close to, I think, between my son and my son's killed some tandies too, but there's probably close to 50 that we've archery killed. And it's a big endeavor to kill one a year, especially the caliber of deer I'm always looking for to hunt. So I'll take a breath and let you guys fire away. And sorry that took so long. I hope it kind of laid out a map of who I am or what I do.
Nope. We really enjoyed all of that. Actually, I had a quick question about your first buck that you killed when you were 12. So with your dad trusting you to go out there by yourself, I was just curious, like what preparation you did before, like to where your dad felt comfortable sending you out there? Like, did you hunt a lot with your dad as well?
Yeah. And, I've been around so long in my life, that story's got so much packed into it. I miss a lot. Yeah. My dad was a hell of an elk hunter and a hell of a mule deer hunter. And he liked the high country. His brothers were all really good hunters. They still are to this day. Some of them have passed. My dad has passed and my Uncle John have. My grandfather had a pack string, and we used to hunt. People that know this country, we used to hunt the Frank Church Wilderness in Idaho. It's the largest wilderness in the lower 48. And we used to pack in 20 to 30 miles on horses. I was doing that, guys, at 7 years old. I was hunting mule deer with my dad at 4 and 5. He'd drag me up these mountains, and I'd walk with him. We hunted chuckers all the time. I had a gun in my hand by the time I was 5. My father was just an amazing man. He had me doing stuff way before today's world would say it's okay. And it's the best thing that my dad ever did for me. And again, I never had a cell phone. We didn't have TV. We had TV, but we never watched it. We got like one channel on the rabbit ears. But no, my father just always prepared me for everything in life. I almost felt like because he left this world so early that it was just meant to be, that he really took the time to prepare my brother and I for everything in life. So I was doing stuff way ahead of schedule. I was driving his pickup, a full-size Ford pickup, 3/4 ton in the old days when I was 8 years old, hauling hay with a farm permit, shit like that, driving the tractor, running my dad's bulldozer. That's just the life I grew up, guys. And I did the same with my boys. My 2 sons, I did the same with them in today's world. I mean, they're doing stuff before people thought, oh, that's way too young for them to do it. No, it's not if you teach them and you spend time with them. So guys, that first buck I killed, I had already had a lot of years under my belt of hunting right next to my dad, archery hunting and rifle hunting. I had been shooting a gun since I was 5, and I killed that deer when I was 12. I shot it with a 270, and I was very comfortable with the 270 at 12 years old. It's what we knew. It's what we owned. It's what we had, and we shot 270s. So yeah, Dad turned me loose, and he turned me loose on our 50 acres. And then I told him I was going to walk through the Potlatch Timber Company ground and 2 miles down the road and do a big loop. And he said, no problem. He said, he goes, I'll be at down there 2 miles down the road at dark to pick you up. Well, when I killed that deer early, I ran all the way home and got home before dark and told him. Like, I ran with that. I had the gun over my back, all safe and stuff, but I just took off jogging. I was so excited that I killed that deer, and I killed it fairly close to the house, probably about a mile away. So I was only about halfway through the woods. But no, Dad he just always turned us boys loose, my brother too, and expected us to be wise about things. And trust me, he'd get on our ass if we were screwing around about serious stuff. Like, it did not happen, or he'd take our freedoms away if we didn't handle our business correctly, which I truly appreciate, because I got to do a lot more than most kids at that age. But yeah, my dad and mom, they just really had us prepared. And then we always had horses and cattle. So we were, I was up feeding cattle at 4 to 5 in the morning, getting on a bus, driving 45-minute bus ride into St. Mary's, Idaho to school, or over to Fernwood, Idaho to middle school. Everything in our life was really early, and you were exhausted at the end of the day in a good way. And then you went to bed good at night, and you always slept good. And that's just how I grew up. I started logging with my dad full time. OSHA would never allow this anymore. But I started logging with my dad full time in the summers. This is no shit. When I was 13, I started sawing. And I was sawing the deck. And then 14 and 15, I started falling. And he taught me all of it. So yeah, just guys, the moral of the story is my parents spent a ton of time with us, and were calculated and deliberate in everything they let us do, but they did a really good job of teaching us safety and being grown up about it. And if my brother or I ever screwed it up, we got it taken away instantly, because they didn't want us, they also didn't want us to be a nitwit and get hurt, but we just weren't those kind of kids. We were just yes sir, no sir to our dad, and looked up to him as our hero. And then mom, I'll tell you what, I smart off to my mom one time in my life, and I never did it again for my father. Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great. It was like I learned one time from my dad, and he said to me, he said, "Don't you ever smart off to my wife again." And I'll never forget that. So that's just how I was raised, guys. I was raised to be serious when you were doing serious things. Yeah. Now, we had a blast. We laughed and played and had the really cool life growing up. So it wasn't like military school at our house.
Yeah.
But we knew how to switch gears when things were serious, and packing a gun was really serious at 12 years old.
Mm-hmm. There is a question here in the comments before I get to my question. Sean, he's one of our co-hosts on the show. He asks, what is the one thing you enjoy the most about being in the woods?
That word might have been different years ago, Sean, but today it's freedom. I feel the most at peace, free, closest to God when I'm in the mountains. It's my getaway from everything place. And I mean, I have a good home and a great wife and wonderful kids. There's still stress in life. And when I hit those mountains, it's just who I am and where I want to be. So I just feel really free. I feel like I'm living out here. I still feel like I can get into these remote mountain places. And I feel like I'm living in Idaho 200 years ago, or Northwest Montana, or Eastern Washington. I like I kind of call that my state. So, I just really enjoy the peace and the freedom. And I love nature. I think if I was pegged as a certain type of learner, it's naturalistic. I really key in on nature and natural things. So yeah, I really enjoy it.
Now, you mentioned the struggles that you've gone through, and my main question here is, now I feel like in Idaho you have to learn all these other predators out there on top of whitetail deer hunting. So what's it like trying, correct me if I'm wrong, do you feel like you have to learn the habitats and I guess you want to say the culture around grizzlies and all these predator animals out there on top of learning whitetail deer to become an effective deer hunter?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You guys are in Michigan. I'll bet if you guys told me what your number one thing is you have to know well, it'd be the pressure from humans.
Yes.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And, I talked to a lot of Michigan guys about that. I was talking to Andy May a week ago. Andy and I were chatting about something. And, he was just throwing some numbers at me of how many people hunt there. Just blew my mind. So the obstacles out here, a lot of people are living here now, moving here. We're very close to California, very close to Washington, a lot bigger states, or population based wise. But now the predators, I'd say the predators and how unforgiving this country is. The weather patterns, the snowstorms, the wind. If you're in the backwoods and you get in a bad wind, you might have to cut 50 trees out of a 20-mile road and spend all night getting out of the woods. And we're talking big timber. And so if you don't have, for example, the right rig set up, if you're not good with a chainsaw, and I mean good, big timber that can hurt somebody, you get your saw pinched or get hurt out there by yourself. Just something that little that nobody would ever think about to hunt these remote whitetails that I hunt, or backcountry whitetails, you're going to be in a pickle. You better have a lot of woodsmanship skills. And then when you talk about the culture of the predators, like you said, Brett, these predators all create this movement of whitetails. And the pressure that they put on, I have to counter that, and I have to anticipate that, counter that, and be ready to make a move by knowing my old bucks so well that I have at least an idea of where they might vacate to. There's no fences. There's no property boundaries where I hunt. for hundreds of miles in a lot of directions. If a whitetail buck gets pushed by a pack of wolves, he might move 5 to 10 miles if he chooses to. He can do that. He has nothing holding him back, and he's got an endless sea of cover. So, yeah, I really have to be in tune with the predators.
Did he freeze?
Yep.
Oh, there he is. Wait, no.
There we go.
Guys, get me back.
Oh, there you go.
You
All
guys
right,
got
good,
me?
man. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Where'd I leave off, guys? Talking predators?
Yep.
Yeah. And
You were just saying how you have to anticipate and kind of be one step ahead because because that buck may choose to move up to 5-10 miles.
Yeah, and it's no joke. These bucks or these deer in this country, a lot of them do migrate that far with the snow levels. But they'll always usually move back into an area they prefer. And that usually happens right now. End of March, early April, all my bucks are moving back up into the mountains because the snow levels are just dissipating. So year round, you play the game or you get in the game with all the predators in your areas that you're hunting, and I keep really close tabs on if I've got wolves in the area. I get a lot of mountain lions. It's one thing I didn't even bring up yet. The mountain lions are in my opinion, the most lethal killer out here when it comes to whitetails.
wow.
And we have a ton of mountain lions. And again, it's because of this vast country and all the cover. Just literally hundreds of miles of security cover, up and down, 4, 5, 6,000 feet elevation. So you get a lot more surface area than you think if you flatten it all out of how big this country really is. But yeah, just tuning into those, being aware of how they're moving your deer around, how your deer are going to behave differently, and different drainages, 50, 60 miles apart, 20 miles apart. I do a big circle, northern Idaho, eastern Washington, western Montana. And I see it pretty much the same everywhere, based on how the predators move those animals, move the whitetails, the elk, and the moose.
Now, I have one question. I'm going to save it at the end because I'm really excited for this. That's what I'm going to save. I'm going to preface this question. So I have one. I'm going to save it for the end, though.
Okay.
So you mentioned having to learn the deer and figure out where they move if they feel pressured from other predator animals. Do you kind of already have like a mindset of where they might be going? Like if you already mapped out where this deer might be at, and then all of a sudden a grizzly comes in, you already have a game plan where they might go as like a backup plan?
Yeah. Let's say a lion moves in. Lions really move my deer, and so do wolves. Bears don't bother my deer as much, and I think anybody that lives out here would agree with me. Bears aren't as big of a bother to the whitetails because they're omnivores and they tend to eat a lot of berries and all that stuff before they go to their den. But grizzlies will eat me. So grizzlies are a whole different ball game with me. I really got to watch grizzlies for myself. Back to the lions, like the wolves. Yeah, because I've always wanted to be successful at killing these old mountain bucks, I put that year-round time in. And because I put that year-round time in and I monitor all my deer on scrapes, and the whitetails really, adhere to my scrapes year-round. Even when they migrate, they come right back to them. They start hitting the licking branches. It's kind of a conditioning thing through their biology to where I really monitor how they move. And as I get a watch, like for example, that buck I killed this year, I had watched him and learned about him for 4 years. Got to watch him grow up. Got to pay attention to where he would vacate to, what direction he would head or get out. When he needed to get out of Dodge anywhere near me, I kind of was able to have a good idea where he was going to go. So yeah, that anticipation comes in on specific animals that I've got fortunate enough to see them survive, make it to 5 years old, 6 years old, and it's very few. If I start with 20 bucks, guys, 1 or 2 of them will make it to 5 or 6 if I'm fortunate. Yeah, wow. So I figured 10% at the best will make it to that age. But anyway, I've just spent so much time with those animals and keeping track of them, and seriously, boots on the ground in those woods, paying attention to everything. Like, for example, I'm going out for a week straight, starting tomorrow, just going to live in the mountains, pull cameras that have been soaking all year. I run soaker cameras in a lot of places. I get all that intel. But the real clues are in really paying attention to every time I'm out there, which is multiple days every month outside of January when it's closed down and I have 7 feet of snow in the mountains, sometimes February. I can usually still get my low ground stuff in February. All that to say, I'm paying attention to every track. And I am not in high density deer population areas. So I really get to know those individual does, their fawns as they grow up, whether they're a male or a little button buck when they get kicked off. When the button buck takes off and moves away from his mama, you know, he has to go find a place to live. And then a lot of times I'll pick them up 2, 3, 4, 5 miles away, those same younger deer. And then about 2.5, they'll settle in to an area they like. A lot of times too, when I kill an older buck out of a spot, the next best buck in that area will kind of move into his spot, because those old whitetails in the mountains learn where the most favorable living conditions are for them to survive predators. Me, somewhat, predators even more so. And that's usually wind dictated by how the winds work in those mountains. So that really protects them. They play the thermals in the wind and strategically set themselves up to stay alive from predators, because those predators are hunting them every hour of the day, every day of the year. So yeah, you really learn. I'll tell you what I learned a lot from is snow. I have snow right now, and I have snow. I've been hiking since January, starting the low ground, getting into the high ground now because the snow's dropping. But when you have snow starting in October and you have snow all the way into April, you want to talk about mapping out what whitetails are really doing. I backtrack all my biggest bucks when I get a chance to get on their track. Even if they don't have headgear on right now, let's say I pick a big buck sheds up and I know his track pretty well. If I come across his track out shed hunting, I'll go walk that trail in the snow for a mile. I did that a month ago on a specific buck and finally found where that sucker's been bedding below my scrapes, probably a half a mile away, and I hadn't known it for 3 years. Didn't know where he was. Finally found it because I had the right conditions and I wasn't lazy about it, and I knew it was his track. So just little things like that. Instead of just going, yep, that's him, I'm going to keep shed hunting, I went, yep, that's him, and that's great snow, and he just walked through here within 24 hours. I'm going to backtrack him. And the reason I don't track him is I don't want to blow him off the mountain or blow him across the drainage. So I don't ever follow him in the off season. I go backwards. That way I can read all of their unpressured sign by me. And then, you know, I'll come across spots where I saw a coyote get on his track and run him for a while, or, you know, I've seen that over the years a lot, or a wolf comes in on a track, or a mountain lion shows up on the track. And then I got to decipher all of that mess.
Yeah.
And sometimes I walk up on them dead. I mean, I should have probably packed it in here tonight, but there's a deadhead out in my garage right now that I could sit and tell you that story where you walk right up on him and go, shit. Yeah, a lion got a hold of him because his nose is chewed off. Or you go, shit, a wolf got a hold of him because his ribs are all gone. So anyway, guys, it's just immersing myself into that world and thoroughly loving being out there doing that stuff, you know, just geeking out on it. I love it.
It seems like Idaho, compared to most states in the United States, that you have a lot more obstacles and a lot more boxes that you have to check. So when you hunt out of state, not really in your neighboring circle that you do, but like if you were to go to like Ohio or Illinois, yep, do you find that it feels way easier, or like you have a higher success because you get there and you're like, dude, this is nothing compared to what I'm acclimated for?
Yeah. And I want to answer this respectfully, because I got some buddies out there that are unbelievable whitetail hunters, and they live where it's probably some of the best hunting there is. Here's what I find. Everywhere I go, and I've been in a lot of states, and I've killed some really big deer in other states. If the whitetail bucks that I'm hunting on any said piece of ground in the Midwest where I've been have not been pressured very hard, I find it fairly predictable to get on them and get on them right away. I mean, I'm talking about getting to hunt. It's almost like a microcosm of what I hunt. It's small. It's very obvious to me looking at a map where they have to be or where they might hide. Out of state where I've hunted where there's really heavy pressure on the whitetails, you get up to that 5, 6, 7-year-old age buck, if he's still alive in those places, even if it's the best states you ever read about or hear about, those old pressured bucks are still pretty cagey. Ohio this year is a good example for me. I hunted a spot that was heavily pressured, according to my buddy, private land, but was heavily pressured during rifle and muzzleloader. And I could see that with those deer and how they were behaving on those pieces. And, you know, I held out for the best buck that I thought was in the area all week and never did get him killed, and had him at 65 yards my last evening and just ran out of time. I think I'd have killed that deer if I lived there for sure. But on the other hand, I've been out of state and got to hunt tremendous deer as far as score goes and age, and just got right on them. One buck I killed, it was a 186-inch whitetail. I killed him in an hour and a half. Another buck, another good example is I was in Iowa years and years ago, and my buddy has 500 acres. He said, go hunt it however you want, Troy. And I dove into a spot after a buck that he had not seen for a month on his property. He hadn't seen him. He'd been hunting him hard. And he showed me the buck. And my buddy said, hey, he said, here's the biggest deer on this place. He goes, but I haven't seen him in the daylight in a month. He had him on trail camera stuff. And, you know, I got to assess all of his tree stands and where he had them hung. And I was mobile even back then. And I asked him if he minded if I dove into a certain spot that looked really good to me. And this is the first time I hunted the deer. And again, this deer hadn't been seen in the daylight in a month. And I had that deer that afternoon at 8 yards, and I let him walk because I didn't want to kill my buddy's best deer. And I shot a different deer. So when you asked me that question, and that buck ended up being 192, my buddy killed him later. And I had him at 8 yards broadside for almost 20 minutes, 8 to 20 yards, just hanging out by me. Anyway, long story short, to answer your question fairly, I feel like pressure is the key denominator in how hard it is to kill a whitetail buck. And I'll even throw this out there. There's some 2 and 3 year old bucks that get so much pressure in their life that they act like 4 and 5 year old, or I'll say 3 and 4 year old bucks. 2 and 3s will act like they're a year older in a lot of places. But yeah, pressure's the key. Has it been easier in some instances on deer that weren't that pressured? Absolutely. It sure felt like it, and the results were there. But out here, nothing like it. Meaning, I've never hunted anywhere like out here. I enjoy going to those Midwest places, getting to hang out with my buddies and hunt flat ground. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a blast. I see way more deer. There's more deer congregated. And there's always a chance to kill a giant in some of the places I get to go. So it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of like a fun break for me from the grind of mountain whitetail hunting. Now, you'll never see me leave here. You'll never see me move from North Idaho. You'll never see me leave the mountains. I will only visit those places because this is where my heart is, and this is the country that made me who I am as a whitetail hunter. I mean, it's the country and the deer that shaped me and taught me. So my heart's right here. I'll die in these mountains.
That's awesome. Have you ever hunted Michigan?
No, and I get a few guys saying, Troy, you need to come out and give it a shot. If I could hunt Michigan, I would want to go hunt the biggest, most vast area you got, the nastiest, vastest stuff you got, and just turn me loose. Or if I could get into some big swamps, just something that had some serious obstacles to it, and then I would do it.
The UP would probably be the best bet if you really want to get into that swampy. It's like no man's land up there, and
the population is just not there, though.
Yeah.
You mean the population of deer?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm kind of used to that. I don't need a lot of deer. Yeah. Do any of the deer in that country, do they get old though?
I'm sure they get old. And I'm not the most experienced, but from what I've gathered and what I've seen, the antlers just don't seem to get the mass that they do in the lower part of the state. Like it seems to be a noticeable difference in the size of the rack for the same age deer down here as opposed to the UP.
If I was ever to come and hunt a state like Michigan, I would hunt age. I wouldn't really care about what a rack scored, and just see if I could find an old deer. I mean, that's what I did in Ohio this year for 8 days. I hunted age, and there was one deer that I think was 5.5 that I let go, but I was saving him for my son. Well, my son was kicking, but he was doing all the scouting with me. I wasn't doing anything that he wasn't doing, but I think he killed the second or third day. And a lot of that had to do with a good buddy of ours that needed a bully buck killed. So, big shout out to my buddy Steve, that pretty much Tyson got to go in and take a bully buck out in Ohio, which was just awesome. Ty executed the game plan very well, set all day, late season too, and set all day so he could catch that buck at a weird hour. And he did. It was in late December, early January, but no, I've got 2 years left in the education world to teach it. I've taught for 31 years. My goal is to hunt Idaho, Washington, Montana, Canada every year, and then go back east somewhere every year as soon as I'm done with my teaching job. And I've worked hard to position myself where I'm going to get to do that. So I really love the North. I love the Northwest. I love the North Country deer, but I want to go to the Midwest somewhere every year. And I've been looking at a lot of places. Like, I would like to hunt, like New York State, Pennsylvania, Michigan, all those states that have such a huge history in deer hunting at least once. I would drive out on those kind of hunts when I'm done with my regular day job, and I'd probably spend 10 to 20 days, and nobody even probably will know I'm around. I'll drive out in some unassuming little rig that's four-wheel drive and gets around good, and I'll just show up in some big public. I would love to do that and document that, just because I want to see the United States from more than just the Midwest unbelievable states that I've been in. And I've been in Oklahoma, killed, Iowa, killed, North Dakota, screwed up, shot over a buck there years ago. Actually had my grunt tube catch my string. I was so bundled up that day. I was hunting off the ground in cattail sloughs. Just weird in North Dakota. And then, I'll get back to Iowa again. But it's funny with me. Iowa's amazing, but I don't know. There's a lot of other states I really like too.
I haven't hunted much in terms of like diversity, but I was lucky enough right around the same time that you guys were down in Ohio. I did a couple of sits down there at my buddy's lease. And I've only hunted 2 seasons ever. Like I'm new to hunting.
Okay.
But it was like night and day difference, in my opinion. Ohio and Michigan. I was in southern Ohio, right by Kentucky, but it was awesome. Just everything about it. I was like, holy crap, man. Like, I could hunt here every day. I mean, I love Michigan too, but it just seemed like a whole other world to me immediately. It was very obvious compared to where I've been hunting here.
Ohio is special. I absolutely love Ohio. There's some really cool public land in Ohio too. Obviously, if you have really good properties, you're most likely going to do better. If you're skilled, and you're going to do well. But Ohio's really cool. I like those northern latitude states too. Like, I would love to hunt Wisconsin. I would love to hunt Kansas. My Pottenger family is actually originally from Kansas. So I always tell myself that's where I get my whitetail bug.
Well, it seems like that's a pretty big state too for hunting.
Yeah, I would like to hit all those great states and hit the mountainous states out east, West Virginia, Virginia, just all of it. If the good Lord keeps me around long enough, I'm going to try to hit all of those states where I can just go into a giant piece of public, Kentucky. I mean, just anywhere where I can venture off to and just show up and dive into the mountains, because I've lived my whole life in the mountains. So nothing's going to bother me about mountain hunting in the East. Nothing's going to bother me. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to be able to navigate it. I really believe the whitetails work very similarly. I've been able to converse and discuss mountain whitetails with guys all over the United States, and they behave very similarly. They even behave very similarly, sorry, tongue twister, in the Ohio hills that I was hunting. I got to hunt a little bit of hill country, one piece that was hilly. Actually, I've been to Ohio twice, and I got to hunt another piece of hill country 5 years ago. And the deer were doing, deer do what deer do. They were using the thermals and the winds and the prevailings and the mixes of it to position themselves to stay alive. So it just all makes sense anywhere I go. And even when I get a hunt flatter ground, if it's open, then I really know that those deer are going to use their eyes more. But anytime you get into the thick, even if it's flat, if it's really thick and dense and impenetratable in some places, they're going to live by their noses. And then they're going to rely on their eyes and ears too, but that nose is going to be key until you get out like in North Dakota in the grasslands where I've hunted it we literally would back ourselves into cane slough swamps and sit right on the edge of the water and make a little spot to kneel down and intercept bucks coming by us on the ground. So yeah, I think too, guys, I purposely years ago, and I've hunted Alberta too, I purposely started venturing out so that I would have just a bigger background and understanding of how whitetails use different habitats.
I would have, real quick, Sean made a comment on here, and I'd have to agree with him on this. If you're looking for the mature bucks, like the older ones, just south of Mackinac, probably, like if you're looking at Michigan, because we were able to do this in Michigan, kind of if you're looking at it like in this section up here, that's where you're kind of looking at. And he did ask a question. He goes, how long, Troy, does it take for you as a hunter to find your stone cold big whitetail buck? And what do you do to find that one big buck that you would call your legendary whitetail?
Is this Sean talking to me?
Yeah, he messaged on a comment board.
Is Sean wanting to know like my all-time greatest, or just those big ones that I consider the caliber I'm looking for and trying to kill every year?
Like, how long does it take? I assume kind of a question. How long would it take for you to find that one buck that's like, that's the one I'm after? And what would you do? What are you doing to go after that buck? Right.
So it's a big process that I adhere to. The method that I use and have just formulated over the years and enhanced, cleaned it up and just continue to get better at it is I always have at least 5 bucks I'm willing to kill, usually, almost always on public land. A lot of it has to do with I'm raising these deer on my scrapes, meaning I'm getting to watch them grow up for 2 and 3 and 4 years before I will even hunt them. I'll let them walk by me. And I've chosen specific places to hunt these deer and to get them in the daylight for 2 and 3 and 4 years based on all the hunting pressure, how the wind works and the advantages of all the whitetails to survive the predators, how the predators work the areas. I mean, it's hard for me to unpack it all, truly. But my point is, I make sure I'm never just stuck with one deer to hunt. I always have a top deer or a top two that are just, they trip my trigger. They get me excited. But I always have a number 3 and 4 too that are freaking awesome bucks, and they're always over 5 years old. Why is that? And this is what we don't ever really talk about. It's all the work I put in outside of it. It's all that. It's what I'm going to do for the next 7 days. It starts for me tomorrow. I'm going to go pull soaker cameras in places that I've never hunted, that I ran a scrape all last year on, or have run them. I've killed deer off of scrapes, guys, that I didn't hunt that spot for 3 years until that buck got to the age I wanted to kill him.
Oh, wow.
Does that make sense? So guys, I'm playing the long game.
Yeah.
On multiple deer so that I'm not stuck with one deer to hunt and then something happens to him and then I'm out of the game. Never let myself be out of the game, ever. And it's because I always at least have 3 to 6 good deer I can hunt in the public lands every year between 3 states. I at least have 1 or 2 of those 5 or 6 that are like really the ones I want to kill. The last 2 years I've killed my number 1 targets, and they were both low 170 whitetails in the mountains. Grocers.
So scrapes are your basically your bread and butter on how I'd say grooming what you want down the road.
Yeah. Grooming, conditioning, watching, patterning. Take those words however you want. I'm in the long game with the whitetail. I get to see him grow up. I get to see him address my spots and all the other deer herd in the area. I get to watch the dynamics of the breeder bucks, the bully bucks, the guy that I hope makes it old enough. I've killed bully bucks before on purpose to save a great 3-year-old, stuff like that. But yeah, it's a long game. It's incredibly rewarding. I love the process. I'm always trying to be ahead of the buck that I'm going to kill at least 2 or 3 years. Man, if I can get on him when he's 3 years old or 2.5 or 3.5, and he starts using my scrapes, if he survives, he's probably in trouble because I'm usually positioned in a place where he feels really comfortable in the daylight. I don't bother with any areas that I only get nighttime travel. I don't even waste my time. I hunt where big deer feel comfortable in the daylight. And a lot of times, I'm not just pulling deer to me all the time either. 50% of the method and the strategy that I follow personally is I go at my big bucks extremely aggressively once they get to age. I go right at them. And if they move on me, I move with them.
What's that age that you're...
Go ahead.
Well, I didn't mean to cut you off, but what's that age? It's like, that's the age I want them at.
5.
I won't kill a deer if he's not 5.
Okay.
I will not hunt a mountain buck ever again in my life unless he's... Now my son's sitting there laughing, going, "Bullshit, Dad. If he's 190, you'll kill him." All right. I know my son's thinking that if he's watching this. Okay. Let's be realistic. Probably never... I don't know if I've ever seen a 190-inch Idaho whitetail when he was 4.5, but there probably has been 1 or 2. So let's say this. A buck that's 5 years old, where I've hunted the last 40 years, usually always hits his maturity and his peak at 5, 6, and 7 out here. So I really target that age. Whitetail buck's skeletal system isn't even fully mature till he's 5. And that's when he starts putting everything into outside of his exertion of living through these really harsh winters and tough conditions and predators. He gets to really start putting his nutrients into his rack, into his overall health if he makes it to 5. So what usually happens for me is if they get to 5 years old, they end up having pretty damn good headgear too. It just works out that way because we have good genetics out here. And our mountains are ridiculously plentiful in native feed that's high in protein and really just amazing browse because of all the logging. And how wet it is out here, guys. I mean, we're just off the edge of the Pacific coast, so we get a ton of rain and a lot of snow. So it's a really good incubating place to grow big whitetails if they can make the age. usually find them at 2 or 3 dead, either in the back of somebody's pickup or by a wolf or a mountain lion is what usually happens. But yeah, that 5-year-old age guys I really like, and those old bucks are the funnest to hunt because they're the toughest to kill. At 5, they're at the top of their game. They're not too old. Dementia hasn't set in yet. You know, they're freaking sharp at 5, 6, and 7. Some of my best whitetails in the mountains are 7-year-olds. Like, they actually grow their best hit gear at 6 and 7. So that's what I like to target. I think I've said this on one other podcast. My rule of thumb now is I'm hunting for a mountain archery buck of a lifetime every year. That's my goal. Like what somebody would consider a buck of a lifetime out here with a bow.
That's a good goal to have. And I have a question, like a comment. When we were talking to our guests last Wednesday, it just sounded like the wolves are running rampant out there. And it's mind-boggling to me in the sense of how you can find these mature bucks get to age, and it sounds like wolves are just basically out there killing everything. And you're able to find these deer get to this age limit.
Well, they're killing a lot, and they're killing a lot of things. They're killing the hell out of our moose. They're knocking the shit out of our elk, and they kill every whitetail they can get a hold of. And the mountain lions are just as dangerous, but wolves run in bigger numbers and need to eat more. And they're great hunters. A good example, guys, is I thought I was going to have a really good shot this year, opening day. Out here in Idaho, it's August 30th. Washington, September 1st.
Oh, wow.
So opening day, I thought I had a really good chance of killing this buck that I've basically left him alone. I believe he was 7 this year. Yeah, he was 7. 6.5 at the youngest. Had him on camera for 4 or 5 years, growing up. Lots of video of him, watched him grow up because I was hunting a different buck that he exposed himself to me when he was young because I was after a different deer. All that to say, rolled in there opening day. Game plan was wired. My shit was wired tight. I was ready to go kill this deer. Thought he might show up for sure within a 3-day period on my big scrapes. And I think I walked 200 to 300 yards from where I parked, and there was fresh wolf shit and tracks in my trail.
Wow.
And my heart just went. But I'm used to this. This is normal. I was just like, oh shit. These wolves are 500 yards from where I want to kill this deer. And I hiked on in, about a half a mile in there. And of course, based on the scat that was in the road and the tracks, that buck had bailed probably 2 or 3 days before they were ever in the road. Now, they might have been in around my tree stand. I actually had wolves on a couple cameras in that drainage, but not that particular spot. But they could have easily blew him out of there, earlier too, because when they roam that country, they're hunting all the time. And they're not always on trail camera, but I really watch for their tracks crossing old logging roads, crossing trails. But yeah, I was just totally out of the game. Totally done. Totally done. And I started scouting. I did not get in a tree stand again. I scouted my ass off and prepped and scouted and prepped and scouted for other bucks that I knew that were alive that I needed to get in the game with. And then it all came together in late November, early December on a specific deer, which I was actually in the game with 3 different deer in the later season. So again, a lot of my, I only set a total this year, I think 2 full days and 4 or 5 partial half days and killed. So I try to be really efficient too. Once I get on a deer and if he's killable, it's very important to me to not cut corners and make all the right moves strategically, go the extra mile and get them killed. They have to not think you're in the mountains with them. If they think you're even in the mountains, they hole up. For example, if they hear your truck coming 2 miles away up a drainage before daylight, and it's kind of close to their area, and I've seen this for years with video surveillance on bucks. If they know you're in the mountains with them, just know you're in the woods with them, they'll hold tight and move at night, even where they feel the most safe in the daylight. So I've learned a lot of that over years just from losing battles with these old bucks. They've taught me a ton.
I know Dan's got some questions. I want to ask one quick question. You said you hunt these deer in the daylight. Where are you seeing these deer kind of in the daylight majority of the time out there in those mountains?
I got to be close to their beds. I got to be close to where, and they don't bed in one bed in the mountain or they'd be wolf shit. They bed in zones based on prevailing and thermal mixes, and they'll bed on one side of a mountain one day and maybe the other or a different finger ridge. It all depends on how that wind and how those weather patterns protect them, because they can't see very far. They can only see between 50 and 100 yards in the thick stuff. And they got predators on them. So I really work hard to identify and hunt the fringes of their bedding, and then I throw a big mock scrape right at them, or I'll over mark an existing scrape that the deer already have there on those fringes. So I'm usually outside of the rut, guys, for a couple weeks a year. I'm usually within 100 to 300 yards of the buck I want to kill, if I'm going to kill him, usually to catch him in the daylight outside of the rut.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's all about the beds, boys. It's all about being close to the right bedding. And when you hunt them in the rut, you try to kill a specific buck, you really got to be on your A game, because you got to go hunt the doe family groups that he sets himself up on in his bedding zone that's near those does. And you got to know where that is. And if you know where that is, you can intercept him working those does and working those big scrapes.
Huh. Yeah. For us, really, for me, it's when the mumbling right there. I don't mean to. Or I notice a lot of the buck beds are kind of like more in that thick stuff, like those briars. And if you get even closer there, you got to make sure that the wind's kind of in your favor. And I've told Dan my opinions on wind, and I only have these opinions only because I've hunted here in Michigan. I don't look much into the wind, only because the only time I care about it is actually I don't pay too much attention to the wind, only because we're out here in Michigan, and the experiences that I've had, I could be hunting a stand. I know there's buck bed over there, but all of a sudden a buck can come right. You never know where a buck's going to come or a deer's going to come in general. That's just kind of how I've grown up personally.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's somewhat different for you guys. The way that I kill my bucks, it works best for me because they get some age and they're very in tune with how they move, is I'm usually hunting just off the edge of a great wind for that buck. I'm just setting off the edge of it enough to where he doesn't quite pick me up before I kill him. Rarely do I ever kill a big whitetail that I expect to travel to me from a direction out beyond me somewhere. Rarely do I ever expect them to come up my entrance trail, because I usually have that pretty damn dialed. So I just don't have them come up my entrance trail. They're freaking too smart for it anyway. If they cross it, I just won't even know they're around. But my point is, I'm usually just off to the edge of a favorable wind for that buck. So he thinks everything's good and he'll move in the daylight. And I'll be just like this year when I killed my buck, my scent stream missed his nose by 15 to 20 feet, maybe 10 yards at most. And I was set up there because based on how the trail system works into this scrape, and it was Washington State, so I had some alfalfa out to the other side. I knew I had to be at this specific spot to catch him either way to come through, because if I didn't have that wind right, I'd have never even seen him that day based on where I believed it was bedding. And he came from the direction I thought he was bedding in. So again, it's all about being in close proximity. The question is how you get them in the daylight, Troy. You better be in close proximity to where they feel comfortable moving in the daylight for whatever reason they're moving. And then you got to play just off to the edge of that, in my opinion. I've been really very successful in getting right on deer every state I've ever hunted, playing it that way. Just get off to the edge of where those bucks favor moving through the wind at. Just get off to the edge of it, and he'll usually come through. When I get those winds that totally change on me and blowing straight in my face and directly behind me down my entrance trail, I have not killed a lot of whitetails out here that walk in with the wind over their back. And it's because of how thick it is out here and how they have lived with predators their whole life. These old bucks usually at least quarter. They'll usually at least quarter into the wind always. And that's just been that. I just play the game that the whitetails give me out here. I play that game.
Yeah, the wind game is something that I'm still learning, still trying to figure out. But I definitely realize how important it is. I mean, I had some deer that I would have been really happy to shoot that caught my scent, and it's a shitty feeling. So I'm trying to, learn and make the most educated decision when I go out there. But part of the tricky part for me is I haven't hunted any large parcels yet. Like, I've hunted small chunks, and it's kind of hard to really figure out the deer when I'm limited to a sliver, if you will. But I'm still so new to it that every time I'm out there, I'm having the time of my life. And if I see deer, I'm having a great time. So I'm learning, but I should be getting
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying I should be getting a bigger hunting access this year. So I'm it's going to be a learning curve for me, but I'm excited for it. And the question,
awesome.
One of the questions that I had, which I think you kind of might have already answered it, but I was telling you before the show that I have 3 boys, and one of my big goals was that I want to get them involved, and I want them to be passionate in the outdoors as well. And with you having 2 boys, I was just curious how, if you had any tips or pointers on how to get the boys involved and passionate about the outdoors.
Absolutely. I want to answer that, but I want to touch base real quick on what you just said about, you're getting into this hunting thing. You're doing it right. You need to enjoy it. Please, people out there listen, don't try to jump from 2 years of hunting experience to 40. It just doesn't happen. You said the key word. You're enjoying the hell out of it. When I had my second year of hunting in, I was enjoying the hell out of it. And I made damn sure the rest of my life I enjoyed the heck out of it, even on the bad days. Never let them get you down. Every bad day, all that means is you're learning. If you have the right attitude about it. If you have the right attitude, any failure is a learning experience. And that's how I've lived my life with these whitetails, or I would have went crazy and quit a long time ago. So, just my best advice to anybody, including yourself that's new to this, enjoy the heck out of it, soak it all in, let the deer, let the woods, let the conditions, let the weather, everything teach you about how the deer function in your neck of the woods. And then, you were talking about being handcuffed. You don't have a lot of land. You guys heard me talk at the very opening statement about what does it mean to me to be out here? It's freedom. It's the one thing I love about my mountains, guys, is I'm free. I don't have to stop at a fence line.
Yeah.
So I'm afforded that. And that's one thing that I love about being out here. So a huge obstacle for you guys and for a lot of my buddies that are excellent whitetail hunters is just acquiring great properties to hunt on when you're hunting smaller parcels. And one last thing, I purposely choose to hunt public because it's so vast. I don't know if I'd hunt a 500-acre piece of public out here if there was 50 guys on it. I probably wouldn't. That's not who I am. I love the mountains. I love the vastness. Okay, the boy question. The best advice I can give any father, mother or father, if you want your kids to truly have a great upbringing, do a ton of stuff with them. Take them with you on everything you do, even if it's a pain in the ass. They will love you for it. They will appreciate you for it. And this is coming from a guy that lost his dad at 17. It means everything to your kids, boys or girls. This is coming from a guy that's taught probably 25,000 students in his career. of 31 years, because we're almost at 1,000 students, in our school every year. Do stuff with them. Involve them in everything you do that they're willing to go do with you. Don't force them, but say, hey, come with me. Go for a hike with me. Sometimes, I always made my boys do things if I thought they were being a little lazy. And they weren't really lazy very often, but every now and then I'd say, get off your butt. We're going. When they were little. And I want to fit, one neat thing for me to share with you guys is my oldest son, Jess, is just this phenomenal bass fisherman. He finished 21st in the world last year in the Bass Nation, he was trying to make the Elite Series, and he's 22 years old. He's a perfect example of, I took him hunting and I took Ty hunting, and Ty fell in love with the whitetails with me. Jess likes to hunt whitetails, but my son, Jess, my oldest, is 2 years older than Ty, and Ty's the football player. Jess fell in love with bass fishing. The cool thing about it is even though I was dragging them around in the woods and shed hunting and doing all the mountain stuff with them, Jess took that same mindset. We live 1 mile from Lake Coeur d'Alene out here where we live. And he took that same mindset as a 12-year-old boy and applied it to bass fishing. And 10 years later, he was the Idaho State champion and Northwest Regional champion last year, trying to make it to the Elite Series. So the whole point is even though my oldest didn't become this passionate whitetail hunter, don't get me wrong, he shoots a whitetail buck every year and loves to eat them. Yeah. But he doesn't spend the time on whitetails like Ty and I do. Ty is just ate up with the whitetails. Crazy thing about Ty is he's ate up with the whitetails and he's ate up with the bass. He's good at all of it, and he is kicking butt and playing college football. So I don't know how that guy does it. He has no time. Jess is literally right now finishing a tournament right now over in Moses Lake, Washington. So all that to say, guys, the best thing I ever did for my sons, had them do stuff with me all the time. And didn't sit in the house. Took them outside all the time. We went and did stuff. And then I had my boys doing stuff way younger than what people thought they were capable of, because my boys, and Dee, my wife, is unbelievable mother. Like, they have high expectations in this home, but not ridiculous to the point where it's overboard. Like, we had high expectations for them, and we used to teach them. The reason we give you guys these high expectations is we want to give you these freedoms that you'll get at a younger age than most kids. Jess and Ty, I bought them a little 15-foot low bass boat with a 25-horse motor when Jess was 12, Tyson was 9. I bought a side-by-side, hooked it up, showed them how to hook it up, showed them how to back it up, turned them loose 1 mile from us down on the big lake. And the lake's 125 miles around it, shoreline. So I had a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old bass fishing. Of course, they knew how to swim great. We did all that prep work first. They had to wear their life jackets. I mean, they had to do it right. Yeah. They were taking a side-by-side and that bass boat, and they were launching it by themselves at 12 and 9 right down here below our house and fishing. I'm not shitting you guys. Daylight till dark. Yeah. They would. And I always told them, you screw this up and you do something stupid, it all goes away. And boy, did they love it. And, God blessed us with 2 really good boys. And I mean, nobody's perfect, but they've been amazing sons. They kicked butt in school. They both are doing great in life. And it's because of that, again, the time their parents spent with them. Yep. My wife took them skiing. I mean, we just always did outdoor stuff with our kids so that they would be acclimated to those opportunities. And then they just took off with it later in life, guys.
That's awesome. Yeah. My oldest son is starting to get interested. I've had him come with me to do a couple stuff, couple outdoor related things like fishing. He comes fishing with me, but now that I referred to that bigger piece of land that I'm getting access to this year, that's what really has me excited. Not because I know I'm going to benefit from it with my hunting, but it's going to be easier for me to include my family.
Yep.
because last year I was hunting significantly smaller parcels, and it was just kind of hard for me to include my family. But this year I will be able to, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Drag them along, have them walk trails with you, have them scout with you. Just maybe they'll find a shed antler, teach them about the mushrooms that grow on it, teach them about the tree plant species that are on it. Kids are like sponges. And again, I've spent 31 years of my life teaching. So it's all about what you do with them. The best teachers in the world are the teachers that do stuff with their students, not just talk. It's one thing I love about my boot camps that I teach out here. I actually get to do hands-on stuff with guys all day long, things like that. So, yeah, I look forward to hearing how that works out for you guys and your kids, both of you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got my son. He's the youngest right now, and I've told my wife, and I really want them to get into hunting as much as I love it. And I've always had the mindset of I hate to lose more than I like to win. My dad instilled that in me, and we kind of just went from there. And my wife always said, like, what happens if your kids don't like going into the sporting world or hunting? And I said, I'm going to make sure that they are, I guess, the best hustlers, the best grinders at what they do. And I'm going to tell them I love and proud of them no matter what they do.
Yep.
Honestly, I'm going to want them to go kind of in sporting worlds because I grew up in it. But I told her, like, as long as you just have the mindset of you're going to be the best at it and put in the work, then I'm going to be there behind you 100%. And we kind of have a running joke in the household of, I'm an Oregon Ducks fan. She's a Michigan fan. I tell my kids all the time, like, you better not become a Michigan fan or you're not going to be any part of this family anymore.
Hey, Ty plays the Oregon Ducks, not this year, but next year.
I saw that on the schedule.
Yeah.
Like,
he gets to go play the big boys.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And that'll, obviously Montana State should not beat Oregon State or Oregon.
You never know.
But if we have a top caliber, top 4, 2, 3, we need a 1, 2, or 3 team in the nation type team like we had a couple years ago. And we've been really good since then, don't get me wrong. Where you see the biggest difference, guys, is the depth. 60 full scholarships versus 80. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You see it in the second half more. But no, I'm very realistic about all that. But I know Tyson, when he first saw that come out, he's like, ooh, Oregon. But I promise you this. That kid of mine won't cower down to nobody. I mean, it just is what it is, He also is very realistic and understands what those big programs, what they carry for. I mean, they carry starters like his 3 and 4 deep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just what they do at those giant schools. That's just how it works.
Especially nowadays where if you don't win 10 games, you're basically fired. So the coaches are on the line every game.
Yeah, it's feast or famine for sure.
Yeah, and whoever has the most money in their wallet can get these kids on those NIL deals. Boom, just like that.
Yeah.
My best friend in life is the new head coach in Nevada, Jeff Choate. We grew up together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he is my best friend. We grew up together here in St. Mary's and played college football together. He's still to this day the best friend. He's a kid I grew up with.
Wait, he just became the head coach there?
Yeah, he's the new head coach at Nevada. He was the co-DC at Texas the last 4 years.
Oh, okay. So the Nevada. Well, funny story. Nevada hired Oregon's, what was it, the defensive line coach or something, like some defensive position coach from Oregon that became the Nevada's head coach. So I think he was there for like 3 years, maybe. You might know better than what I would have.
See, I didn't know anything about Nevada real close, except for I think it was the old, was it Kaepernick? Is he the one that played there? Yeah. But Jeff, my buddy Jeff was at Boise State all those years. They went on that huge run.
Oh, back in the day when they beat Oklahoma and the Fiesta.
Yeah, Jeff was on that staff. So Jeff's an old Peterson protege type guy, and obviously Jeff's his own guy. But Jeff literally grew up with me. We used to drive each other to school every day into St. Mary's, Idaho. Yep.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So if you guys remember this and you're sports fans, just keep a little eye on Nevada and see how they do the next couple of years. They really struggled last year. I mean, our our Big Sky FCS schools beat up on them. But I think Jeff will have that program turned around within 2 years, probably 3 at the most.
Is he more of a defensive or offensive type guy?
He is
defense, right? Because you just said he was at defensive coordinator at Texas, right?
Yeah, he's a defensive guy, but I'll tell you what Jeff is. He's such an incredible human. And I'll tell you what, he is the most genuine, honest, super intelligent, hardest working. He's just an incredible coach. Nevada be lucky to hold on to him for 3 to 5 years. His last stop will probably be a Power 5, in my opinion, with the network that Jeff has built. But I don't know. He might stay right in Nevada and just be happy there, because I know he wants to beat up on Boise State, because he was the top 2 finalists for the Boise State job like 2 or 3 years ago, and he got beat out by a guy that they should have hired Jeff, and now that guy's gone, I believe.
What's his name?
Avalos.
Arroyos, I think.
Yeah, no. Avalos. Yeah, and I think Jeff really wanted that Boise job because that's where he was originally. Plus, he's an Idaho guy. He's from Idaho.
Yeah,
he really wanted that boy. But now Jeff's that kind of guy, though. Now he's at Nevada, and guess who his number 1 rival is? Boise State.
Yeah, payback.
Oh yeah,
and he is an incredible human. Like the guys that play for him, Texas, everywhere. They say you literally run through a wall for that man, because he's that caring, but he's got it all. He's an excellent teacher, excellent motivator, knows how to run a football program. He was the head coach at Montana State. He actually recruited my son and then went to Texas. So yeah, I know we're off on a tangent here, but again, all this boils down to, I've lived my life in the whitetail world and Jeff has in football, and we both come from the exact same mindset, exactly the same. We kind of raised each other. Jeff kind of had a rough home life, and I lost my father, and we just took care of each other from all through high school and then all through college.
Those are the best friendships, man.
Yeah.
My buddy that I grew up with, that I shot my first deer with, because I had an early exposure to hunting, because I grew up with my friend and his family. They were an outdoor family. So caught my first pike with them, shot my first wood duck, shot my first buck. And yeah, we're still buddies to this day. Like those childhood friends, just something special about them.
Yeah. When you get to keep 1 or 2 that just have every attribute you ever valued in a human, it's pretty cool to have those lifelong friendships. Jeff and I are both, and we're the same age, obviously, went to school together, same class, and we have been friends for 40 years of brotherhood.
That's amazing. Well, I'd like to kind of wrap up tonight's show. And here's my question. At the end of the show, I said I would ask. So anyone that's kind of an East type hunter listening to the show, what would you tell them out of everything they've learned kind of up to this point from what you've talked about? How can they take what you're doing out there and with the mountains and basically, like I said, everything out there, and apply it out here in the East and the flatland type of hunting?
Well, I think tonight we talked a lot about just kind of life and in some general things. I don't know if we went down any rabbit holes on tactics, but a lot of people listening can just Google my name if they really want to hear some tactical, really in-depth stuff. But what was really good I liked about tonight, guys, is I think no matter where you whitetail hunt, and because I've hunted in a lot of places, I can be honest about this because I've done it. Everywhere I go, the common denominator in how a whitetail behaves is his age and how much pressure he gets. I don't care what kind of pressure it is, but if it's deadly pressure, he's going to be cagey. And if he has good age, he's going to be cagey. So that's synonymous across the board, across North America and into Canada. I do believe that. And I've seen it, and I've witnessed it, and I've killed in multiple states that are way different than Idaho, Washington, and Montana, way different. What I've also noticed, everywhere I go, whitetails are, it's still all biology. Feed, bedding, transition zones, security cover, using whatever they have available to them to survive. In Michigan, it's probably going to be a swamp. And I've heard David Riley talk about it a lot. My bucks go to up into the bluffs and hide out in the big timber, and his deer go into the swamps and they'll lay in water. It's all really about you diving into your playing field that you have available to you and breaking it all down and letting the whitetails teach you exactly how they use it and how they react to all the pressures. And when you start tuning into that, putting time in, really reading the sign, scrapes are huge. They really are. They're a deadly trapping type weapon to use against a deer. Big scrapes are just like trapping a whitetail. Feed is obviously huge. Feed, bedding, scrapes, learning how all of your whitetails in your area have to survive is key. Learning that, figuring that out, and then you ask yourself, how do I hunt this area in an intelligent way to make deer that I would be happy to kill not think I'm around, not know that I'm there. And when you can do that, you'll kill the kind of deer you want to kill. I will say this, as you climb the ladder of age in a whitetail buck, you're going to get an old animal that's very sharp and keen to any type of negative stimulus. And he's going to have survival outs and escape routes, and he's going to have ways to maneuver around you or just exit the area if he needs to. So you got to use your head too, and you got to really think with a lot of common sense, but also don't let pressure or anything like that get to you. Go enjoy the hell out of it. Get eaten up by it. And it works all over the country. Whitetails do whitetail things. Whitetail do whitetail things everywhere I've ever been. You just got to key in on what conditions and stimulus around you in any given area is maneuvering them in the ways that it's going to based on their survivability.
Yeah, I know one thing that for me is just I like to kind of just sit back and watch and see what they're doing. And I feel like what I've learned kind of growing up from what my dad's taught me and what I've read a lot and what I've heard from other people talk about is I like kind of just sit back and just see what the deer are doing out where I'm hunting and kind of adapt to it. And I feel like that's on my personal level, that's helped me more mature as a hunter. And I think for me, my biggest thing is knowing the biology, knowing the deer inside out can really help make you a better hunter as well. So, and you just know the whitetail deer, how everything works inside and out of how it does and what you can figure out what they're doing month into year. I think that, and that's my opinion, that can make you a better hunter. And kind of going off of piggybacking on what you said.
Yeah, you nailed it. You're spot on. I've said it probably in every podcast I've ever been on, and if I didn't, I should have. Let your deer that you are hunting in your neck of the woods, in your environment, let them teach you. That observation is huge. I'm observing all the time, scouting, picking up their sheds, walking hundreds of miles a year because I love the exercise, especially at my age. It's awesome for me. Sitting in tree stands and letting 2 and 3 year olds come by and just really getting to watch them, and done that for decades. And does, really watching my does and learning all my does by their faces and their body type and knowing exactly who they are. That observation is huge because observation is what leads to making decisions. So yeah, no matter where you're at, you got to attack your playing field, your equation in a logical, reasonable, but tactical approach. And I'd say this, don't cut corners. Don't allow yourself to get lazy and cut corners on things that will ruin months and months of work, and you ruin it one day because you're being lazy about something. Those little things like that pay big dividends later if you do not cut corners on specific tactics or strategies. Make yourself go the long way in if you need to because of the wind that day. Who cares if it's pouring the rain on you for an hour or two working your way into a spot because you had to walk farther, you get soaked. Carry an extra set of clothes in your backpack, change out 200-300 yards from your stand. Do all those extra things that it takes to make it work. And the really good ones, the guys that are really excellent at killing whitetails, the men and the women that do it on a high level, they always figure it out. They always figure out their equation no matter where they're at. They get it figured out and they get in the game.
For me, it's kind of pay attention to the details, the small little things, because those small little things just keep stacking up brick on brick on brick. And eventually you're going to have your playbook at the end of the day, and you can use that almost in a lot of areas.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to have heard myself talk about whitetails 30 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you are a great resource. I will say that, especially for people like me who is at that sponge phase where I'm just trying to soak up everything.
And that's right where I was 30 years ago. I just got to start really young, guys, and I got to go on my own. So I had to learn on my own. I had no choice.
Well, Dan, did you have any lasting questions or anything like that for Troy?
Just mainly Troy. I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed our conversation, talking about our families and just getting a good look into what it's like hunting in Idaho. But for anybody who would like to find you and look up more information and more content that you have on social media platforms, could you share with us where people can find you at?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for giving me this little bit of time. Long time Whitetail Addictions guy, under the Andre DeQuisto group for the Whitetail Addictions guys. So please come over and see us at Whitetail Addictions. Our Lone Wolf custom gear is there's just no better gear that I've ever used ever to kill big whitetails. I got a hold of an Andre DeQuisto stand back in the 90s, and it changed my ability to be quiet and stealthy on big bucks. It was incredible. I totally went away from steel back in the 90s, and it changed everything for me on just being a more efficient hunter. So Lone Wolf Custom Gear, Whitetail Addictions TV, the nice whitetail that I killed this year. There'll be an episode out on that. My son killed 2, one in Montana, one in Ohio. All of our episodes, guys, are awesome. The Whitetail Addictions team is really, really good men and women that are excellent hunters. So jump over and see us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook there. And then personally, if somebody wants to chat with me about whitetails, I really like to talk whitetails with people on my Instagram. And my Instagram is MTN_man. So Mountain Man 33. 33 is my old number, old football number. So yeah, hit me up anytime on Instagram if you have any questions, any like specific or tactical questions, or you just want to shoot the about whitetails. I really enjoy trying to help people. I think that we all need to give back before we leave this earth. So it's kind of been my mission anytime I'm on a podcast to hopefully help somebody out some way.
Well, you should certainly have with me. I've listened to you on a couple other podcasts as well, which is why I was nervous about tonight, because you stood out immediately. Like as soon as I listened to you, I was like, wow, that guy is very interesting. Like I want to hear more. So
well, yeah. You guys reach anytime. Like I said, I always try to get back to everybody if they shoot me a question. I mean, I talk to a lot of people, but the whitetail world has given me so much. It's blessed me so much. It's blessed my family. It's been a lot of fun. I've had some of the best times of my life with my sons, and my wife is just a saint. She just supports all of her boys, including her 2 male labs. So there's 5 males in this house.
Oh man.
And 1 female. And my wife is the superstar behind it all that just supports us all and is actually the quiet saint in all of this. So yeah, I would say this to all you men out there: make sure you have a darn good woman in your corner, because it definitely makes it a lot easier.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
I told my wife basically a funny story real quick is on our first date. I'm a hunter and a golfer and a college football fan. So in the springtime, I'm going out golfing when I can on my spare time. I'm going out hunting in the fall. And on Saturdays, my butt is going to be in that chair watching college football. She knew that day one. She goes, okay, I can handle with that. Now you told me right away.
Yeah. That's, sorry, but I got to say this. When I first met my wife, I was 28 or 29, and I was ready to settle down then. I'd been able to live in the mountains for about a decade, or not quite, but close, doing this whitetail things as being single. And when I met her, I said, here's my exact words. I said, you're not going to understand this. You're not going to get this. But when I say I like to hunt, it's not going to make sense, because you're going to just think conventionally what people do to hunt. And she tells this story all the time. She says, and when Troy told me that, I thought, oh, whatever. I'm from a small town. All the guys hunted. She told me about, I don't know how many months it was into our marriage. She goes, you weren't shitting. She goes, this is way different. but she's been super supportive. And she gets it though. She's really intelligent. She's hard. I mean, my wife was a Division I athlete, played volleyball at Idaho. She just gets she understands work and ethic and work ethic and just preparation and being at the top of your game. So she's able to relate her athletic lifestyle to how we apply that same mindset to hunting. And I think that's helped. It really, I believe, has helped Dee. My wife's name is Dee, and it's helped her to understand it. As long as I'm doing what I need to be doing as a husband and a father, she's always just really happy and supportive for me. And if I ever start to slip at all as a husband and a father, trust me, I get put in my place.
Well, that's what a good woman does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And we kind of, it's been easier now because our boys are out of the house, and we're both just workers. We just go. And my old man told me when I was young, he said, I don't care what you do. You don't ever let anybody outwork you at anything you do, ever. He said, you don't. And my wife's that way. We'll go get 8 to 10 cord of firewood every year because we love firewood, and we like to burn firewood because we love it. And I've logged my whole life, so I have the equipment and the access to it. Even though we don't have to have it, we love it. That lady will split firewood and pack wood and do it with the best of any man, but then she can go get in a dress and go out on the town, and people wonder why the hell I'm even with her. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty fortunate, guys.
That's awesome. I know Sean would like to make a personal comment, though. He says, thank you, Troy, for coming on to the show, and he appreciates you taking the time out of your day to come on and talk with us, man. That's what Sean says. Thanks,
Sean. Appreciate it. You guys have been a really good time. I enjoyed talking to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely, Troy.
I don't want to take up much any more time, Troy. Again, picking out back what Sean says. Thanks again for taking time to come talk with us. We've talked a lot of topics tonight, and it made for an interesting show, and I am greatly appreciative of that. I know Dan and everyone else is very appreciative of that as well.
Right on. Thanks for helping me out on that schedule, guys. Sorry about the Sunday thing, but I had a lot going on Thursday.
No problem at all, man.
Okay. We're flexible, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
All right.
We will stay in touch, Troy, and best of luck in all your future endeavors, man.
Yeah, same to you guys. Best of luck, guys, and just go enjoy it. And enjoy it. Enjoy the heck out of it. Enjoy it with those kids.
Will do.
Thanks, Troy. Have a good night, buddy.
You too.
All right.
Well, that made for a fun show.
Oh man,
it felt like more of a life learning type of show, in my opinion.
I don't know. I just enjoyed talking to people. I like to relate.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Idaho is definitely a state that I want to go to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
After talking to the two guests that live there, I'm definitely gonna go out there at some point.
I have my poker buddy. He's been trying to figure out how we can all go out to Idaho and hunt. So if anything, I want to try and get you along with that. If we ever get the time to go out there, we're always trying to schedule stuff, and that's always the big problem.
Yeah, Idaho definitely seems like something that I want to lay my eyes on. I want to see firsthand. But we got time.
Yeah.
I still got to learn how to hunt in Michigan before I start worrying about hunting in another state. Well, I'm still cutting my teeth.
I'm looking forward to seeing Montana because they're backdoor neighbors. So I'm interested to see.
I have a feeling Montana is going to be very similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
But equally badass.
Exactly. Well, that wraps up tonight's show. Do not forget, we go live Monday through Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you would like to be a guest on our show, message us on our social media platforms. Dan, where else can they find our previous episodes at?
YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, or X, right?
Yep, X. It's X now, and obviously any of your podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, stuff like that. But Dan, that concludes tonight's show. Tomorrow we are starting our week of Illinois.
All right, a little bit closer to home.
Exactly. Let's
close out tonight's down there, though.
What's that?
There's big bucks in Illinois for sure.
I know. Lee Lakowski bought property in Illinois, so I'm very anxious to talk to those guests.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to tomorrow, and yeah, man, let's wrap it up.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.